didn't I play Black Ops 2? Short answer, it's COD. Long answer, I used to enjoy the Call of Duty series. Its aims of being the modern day equivalent to the action movies of the 80s was kind of endearing. Except when it wasn't. Modern Warfare 3 destroyed any faith I had had in the series, thanks to its extreme lack of player input and its ugly art design and terrible plot. Whatever charms the multiplayer had quickly became buried underneath an avalanche of glitches and lag compensation frustrations. In short, I had little hope for the series getting me to take up the call again. I guess this means that you should never judge a book by what came before, especially if what came before wasn't their fault really. Treyarch had already taken huge story risks in the first Black Ops, with its Manchurian Candidate-inspired plot taking the modern military shooter to the extremes of action movie cliches and intrigues. It was also a near classic thanks to its multiplayer component taking huge steps forward in the way players customize their experiences. They now deliver one of the most exciting leaps forward in the modern military shooter story structure since the first Modern Warfare blew away the world of gaming.
There will be nothing anyone can do to stop it.
You play primarily as David Mason, son of Alex Mason, who was the protagonist in the first Black Ops game. Your objective is to hunt down one Raul Menendez, a cyber terrorist who seeks revenge on America for the death of his sister. During the course of the game, you will play as a couple of other characters, notably Sergeant Frank Woods in the past, and Menendez himself, as you make choices that will affect the entire world. The narrative, at first glance, would seem to be your typical military shooter yarn, and in the long run it does indeed prove to be that, with many twists and turns easily seen from miles away. However, it is the several choices that can be made by the player that influence the story, some subtly and others in major ways, that helps make this one of the best shooter campaigns in recent memory.
We are ready.
The story has lots of big set pieces and action movie moments, but it punctuates the usual heedless momentum of the series with Strike Force missions, which operate as pseudo-RTS scenarios, the outcomes of which have major repercussions for the story. There are also some clear-cut decisions that must be made, with more black and white outcomes, but the fact that the game's narrative evolves based on the sum total of all your decisions means that every outcome comes heavily charged with more personal touch from you, making this story a lot more impactful than the Battlefield series. The narrative comes heavily armed, with some pulse-pounding and awe-inspiring moments that rival those of its peers. It borrows heavily from history, with half of the missions taking place in the past, and featuring notable Cold War personalities and scenarios, which is a nice touch, even if some of the resulting events come off as heavy-handed and tasteless.
Lieutenant Colonel North, NSC. You already know Jason Hudson.
But the past missions aren't where the meat of the story is based. It's the future we want, and the future doesn't disappoint. Some seriously impressive tech gets shown off here, with unmanned drones, a spider cam, and optical camouflage suits being the highlights. The glimpses of where society might be headed are pretty imaginative, with one level taking place on a Minority Report-inspired island of the rich, and a female president taking the lead of a nation under attack. The writing, with its themes of rich versus poor and the consequences of battle, might be Spec Ops Light, with nowhere near the same impact on the player, but it's a promising step forward nonetheless. Some of the characters come across as hilarious, with the Admiral directing your missions using a certain word far more often than necessary before we start questioning how he got this far in life without inheriting the sorest bumhole that ever lived.
Get this cocksucker off my flight deck. Gladly, sir.
But most of the characters are solidly written and performed, with standouts being the main villain and a pouty hacker.
Great day to be you.
Yeah. And it's a bad day to be relevant.
Though I do miss Ed Harris, replaced here by Michael Keaton. Ed Harris's presence brought an air of authority that few characters possess in this game.
From this point on, today never happened.
The completion of the missions unlocks more weapons and abilities that you can utilize in subsequent playthroughs, enhancing the replay value to an astonishing degree. Graphically, the game engine is starting to show its age, but it still manages to bring impressive performance and art design to offset its graphical shortcomings. With all of the narrative heft this game brings to the forefront, it's a shame that much of the gameplay is nothing but a similar riff on what has gone before. The controls and mechanics are familiar, with little change overall to the feel of movement. There are a few new twists to the formula, with the ability to customize your loadouts before each mission being a welcome change, and exploring the environment with your access kit equipped can often lead you to gaining several new abilities and weapons, which can ease the difficulty of subsequent encounters, and make for some amusing moments. Some of the new abilities don't seem to help as much as they would seem to, with the optical camouflage doing little to actually conceal me from the enemy. That would probably be a bit more distressing than it is if it weren't for some spectacularly dumb enemy AI. The only challenge most encounters provide is the entire enemy force either zerg rushing you or hitting you with rocket launchers and grenades. There is no genius amongst the enemy troops, it seems. But as dumb as the enemy AI can be, they come nowhere near the level of suckitude that your allies can stoop down to. There were so many instances where I died because an ally would not cover me that I began to curse whoever programmed the friendly AI into a special circle of hell where the developers of big rigs will also hopefully reside. This would not be so troubling if the entire Strike Force premise did not rear its ugly head every now and then. Let me tell you what's frustrating. Setting your soldiers up in a solid defensive position, and then having them all wiped out by a single enemy standing right in the middle of all of them out of cover and using only a pistol. Ugh. It's a good thing you can jump right in and sort things out yourself, but your friendly soldiers are so mind-numbingly retarded that I eventually resorted to just herding them all into a room and going off and saving the world by myself. Which worked out surprisingly well, given how stupid the enemy AI is. I never failed a mission on normal mode, but I can see how stupidly difficult and frustrating things can get on hardened or veteran, when you're relying on the shooter equivalent of lemmings to get things done. The amount of explosives that the enemy throws around on campaign missions can also be a bit aggravating, but then again, they are the only way the stupid enemies could really offer me any challenge whatsoever, so fair is fair, I guess. There are a few set-piece moments where you will die, and die a lot, as you try and figure out just what the fuck nuggets the designers wanted you to do. Thankfully though, their presence is limited, and thank Christ, otherwise I would have told the narrative to piss off. Bollocks. The sound is pretty lackluster for this game too. Every gun sounds like someone banging bits of plastic together. It's not pleasant on the ears and not very impactful. The maelstrom of noise can also affect gameplay, as many of the commands thrown my way were often drowned out beneath all of the wimpy explosions and nerf guns. Trent Reznor shows up here, but his music seems confused and frightened, offering no hint of a personality in case all of the jocks and war heroes might pounce and devour him alive. His and Jack Wall's efforts certainly come nowhere near Trent's apocal work for The Social Network or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or Wall's Mass Effect 2, which is what we hoped they could deliver here. With all of these flaws, how can I justify calling this game an experience you might enjoy? Well, you'd be surprised how well a strong narrative drive can save a game from complete ruin. Spec Ops The Line, The Walking Dead, and Mass Effect all have their own mess of huge gaping flaws, but the stories they tell are immersive as hell. Like Black Ops 2, they are all driven by player choice, so the experience is enriched by you being involved in its momentum. That's why this game can still be counted amongst the top games of the year, at least amongst the great surprises. It might not necessarily be a classic, nor is it anywhere near the greatness of the aforementioned games, but it is involving in its own right, and it should serve as a nice stepping stone for the future of this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.